let's get into the draft. Let's talk about something positive because the Mariners did do something positive in the first 2 rounds. I think that's what we're spending a majority of the time on. But let's start with the switch pitcher, Jurrangelo Cjintje. Is this one of the most unique prospects ever? Is that a fair statement?
That's a good question. Ever. I saw your guys' podcast about that the other day, about whether or not he's the most unique prospect ever. I mean, I'm trying to think of guys that have a more unique story. My only reservation is like Tim Tebow, for example. If you thought Tim Tebow was an actual prospect, probably a more interesting prospect. I just don't think Jurrangelo Cjintje a year from now is going to be a quote-unquote interesting prospect because I think he's just going to be a right-handed starting pitching prospect. And so if you subscribe to the idea that he can switch pitch, then yeah, it's super interesting. But if you're like me and you think he's just going to be a right-handed starting pitching prospect, I mean, he's probably just a really good starting pitching prospect. But it is a good question. There hasn't been hardly anybody that's been capable of doing this sort of thing. And I'm trying to think of like more interesting, nuanced stories like Tebow and some of those, like maybe Michael Jordan coming up and trying to do that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly up there. Yeah, that's another good one. Russell Wilson. I mean, yeah, you could throw the football, baseball guys, the Deion Sanders, Bo Jacksons of the world. I'm trying to think if there was a guy like I think Jose Altuve was a pretty interesting prospect when he was coming up. 5'5" second baseman that's lighting the world on fire. Like, how does this make any sense? And then, the Angels drafted a guy that was 7 feet tall this year, 6'11" this year. That's a pretty interesting prospect. So. Or I guess one more is we could do. I think it was Jim Abbott was his name, who didn't have a left hand. He just put his arm into the glove and made it work. So yeah, Jurrangelo is certainly in the top 10. I'll give you that.
So as we get into the switch pitching thing here, which is kind of the route I think we're going down first because you just mentioned it. The Mariners say they're going to let him at least start out as a switch pitcher, although you and I think a lot of people believe his future is a right-handed starting pitcher. My follow-up to that is I think you're right, and I think most people are right that his career will mostly be served as a right-hander, but I wonder, do the Mariners have in the back of their mind the idea of trying to get creative with Cjintje a little bit, in the sense of mostly he's going to be a righty, but let's say there's a lefty that comes up that has really bad platoon splits and doesn't hit against lefties. Could they say, oh, for one batter, you can switch over to the left side because the matchup plays right, and that's maybe why they'll let him continue to switch pitch?
I think the only scenario that makes sense is if they think they can unlock a little bit more from the left side. Now, he obviously knows what he's doing. He's been up to like 94 from the left side, 95 from the left side, but I look at it like this. Like, if you have Joey Gallo coming up to the plate, right, and you're like, I don't really want to pitch to this guy from the right side, is 98 with a flat approach angle, a solid changeup, a back foot slider, and a cutter, is that a better option than a guy throwing 90 from the left side with a slower 81, 82 mile an hour slider? For me, at least, I would think that if you have conviction that you can command the changeup, it's still a better option from the right side. Now, like I kind of alluded to, if Seattle thinks, hey, there's still some untapped potential here. Like, we can get this guy 92 to 94 from the left side and firm up that breaking ball and see if we can get a third pitch in there, a curveball or a changeup. If they think that's possible and they want to spend development time on it, then maybe it makes some sense. But I have a hard time seeing a universe where the stuff from the left side will be more dangerous, even to the biggest platoon hitters, than what he's going to be capable of from the left side.
What was the point then of drafting him this high? Because I feel like his stock is 15th overall pick if he's a switch pitcher. Is that a fair assessment? It seemed like if he was just a right-handed pitcher, he would have been picked a little bit lower. That would have been more his area, more of what his signing bonus would have been worth. Do you almost have to, if you're picking him at 15, say we need to utilize all these skills that we can?
I don't think so. I think I disagree. I think this is about where he fits. It wouldn't have surprised me if Seattle saved like $200,000 on it, like maybe the difference between pick 15 and pick 16. But I've said this on some other shows. I don't think, like for Seattle, specifically for the Mariners, Jurrangelo Cjintje is a better pitching prospect than Trey Savage. But for the Toronto Blue Jays or for the New York Mets or for the, I don't know, Boston Red Sox, a team that hasn't shown the ability to develop pitching at a very, very high level yet, Trey Savage is much more plug and play. Saint is a better athlete. He's got better release metrics. He's got better feel for spin. He's got 4 pitches. He's got more fastball value. For me, at least, that there's untapped potential and pretty soft clay when it comes to developing Saint. He's probably not going to move as fast as Trey Savage is going to move, but for me, at least, Jurrangelo is a potential low number 2, whereas Trey Savage, I find a difficult development path getting him into more than a mid 3, a solid 3, and even that is getting, at least for my money, like the 80th, 85th percentile out of him.
Well, I'm glad you dove into that a little bit, because I think a lot of Mariners fans, when they saw Savage sitting there at 15, figured that was the slam dunk pick, but they went with Cjintje instead. And to your point and what you're elaborating on here, the upside seems to be higher. And with that, he's got the low release angle too, which seems to be a Mariners theme over the last couple of years. Like, do you think that's something that they really like too? Like between the Brian Wu type release angle, Bryce Miller's got a fairly low release angle. Like, do you think this is a guy where they looked at him and said, "Oh, this plays into the type of pitcher we like"?
Yeah, without question. And I think there is like a stereotype and a cliche with starting pitchers where it's like, why wouldn't you take the guy that's 6'4"? Like 6'4" is what they look like. Like that's what scouts love. Yes, George Kirby and Logan Gilbert are both 6'4", 6'5". But I would combat that by saying, how tall is Luis Castillo? How tall is Brian Wu? How tall is Bryce Miller? They're all, if I'm not mistaken, all 3 of those guys are 6'2" or shorter. And I think Wu and Castillo are both 6'1". I could be wrong on that. Castillo might be 6'2", but I don't think height precludes a pitcher from being able to be extremely effective. And so because of that, I would just throw that narrative out the window and look at the stuff and look at the athlete and look at what Seattle's done with similar clay over the years.
If you're building a checklist for Cjintje in the minor leagues to develop over, let's say, till the end of next year, so a year and a half into his pro career, what does he need to check off?
Well, it starts with fastball command. It's not bad by any means, but if you're going to get the most efficient output out of Jurrangelo, he's got to be able to hit all 4 quadrants, and he's got to be able to pitch better to his glove side. Right now, when he misses the fastball up and away. He misses the fastball into the right-handed batter's box. So the best starting pitchers in baseball, and frankly, the starting pitchers that find success at the major league level, are the ones that can command the fastball with conviction, right? I think the other 2 are going to be the ability to throw the slider to left-handed hitters. Right now, he hasn't really had to do that. I know he did switch pitching a little bit in 2023 and 2024, but you have to learn how to throw a back foot slider with more frequency. He didn't do it a whole lot at Mississippi State, so that would be the next thing. And then so I guess there's 2 more. One, you have to throw a whole lot more changeups because there's a whole lot more left-handed hitters that you're going to be running into in pro ball. That usage has to go up. And then the last thing that I would add, and this might be something that he can do when he makes his debut. This isn't a huge pressing thing. He's got to develop a consistent cutter that he feels comfort in. You got to be a 4-pitch guy, and I think with his arsenal, just the way that it's built right now and the direction his pitches move, he needs something that's a little bit flatter and moves to his glove side. So I would build a cutter in there as well.